Hi everyone, Mike Bruno from PKI Solutions here. I'm a former PKI engineer and currently I'm a developer working on PKI Spotlight. Today I'd like to go over an exciting new PKI Spotlight feature, CDP AIA status monitoring. As you can see here on the dashboard screen, there's a brand new section, CDP AIA status, and it shows some useful information here. And if you click on topology or the topology section here on the left, we'll see some new information on the topology screen. So as before, you have our PKI hierarchy here, but there's some new indicators showing the CDP AIA status. And next to each indicator, there's a view button. So in my environment, I have one root CA, which issued two issuing CAs. So if I look at the root CA status, I just have one AIA location and one CDP location for a base CRL. And both of those are in an OK status. And also this cool indicator here, this progress bar, shows you how far away each of these elements are from expiration. Now, if I look at the same information for my issuing CAs, it's a different story. So here for my associate CA, my certificate is okay. It's got plenty of validity left. My base CRL is considered to be an expiring status, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later when we look at the settings screen. My delta CRL is okay. And my OCSP response is also okay. Now if we look at my what I'm calling the acquired CA, we have the certificate is fine, the base CRL is expiring, but then our delta CRL is expired. So that's why when you look at the indicator for this CA, we have an error rather than just a warning or okay. Now another cool feature on this flyout screen here is that for any of these elements, I can actually download the response. So for instance, the CDP location here, if I click the download button, I can download it in either PEM or DIR format and be able to have a look at it right here. Now in the upper right here, you can see when the CDP AIA statuses were last fetched. That happens on a schedule that you can configure. However, you also have the ability to trigger a fetch on demand by clicking this button here. And that'll go out and do the fetch right then and there. Something else I'd like to point out about the topology screen is that although each of my CAs are issued from the same root, they actually exist in different forests. But as you can see in the topology screen on Spotlight, we can show the entire PKI hierarchy. Now compare that to PKI view. Right now on my screen, I have side by side VMs that are in my main forest and my acquired forest. And I have PKI view up in each of those. And as you can see, you only see the elements that are actually published in each forest. Another major advantage that PKI Spotlight has over PKI View is that Spotlight can actually notify you if any AIA or CDP URLs are invalid. So as you can see here, I have the events table open and I'm filtering by controller. Anytime you see event ID 45, that means that the CDP AIA was refetched and at least one URL came back expiring, expired, or otherwise invalid. In the settings screen, you can set up email alerts whenever event ID 45 gets triggered, so your team will know that there's an issue that needs to be addressed with your CRLs or your certificates. Now let's head over to the settings screen to see how this feature is configured. I'm going to click this new section, CDP AIA. Now when you first install this new version of Spotlight, this radio button will be turned off. In order to enable the CDP AIA checking, you need to turn it on. So let's go through each of the setting properties here. In the first section, CA, the first property is validity threshold. This indicates based on the full lifespan of the CA certificate, whether it should be considered an online issuing CA or an offline policy or root CA. In my environment, online CAs are valid for 5 years and my root CA is valid for 20. So by setting this value to 5, any CA certificates that are valid for more than 5 years are considered to be offline CAs. The next property is offline expiration threshold. This indicates how many days away from expiry an offline CA certificate should be to be considered in expiring status. So renewing an offline CA certificate requires a lot of coordination and planning, so you should configure this property to give you warning far ahead of time. In my case, I'm considering an offline CA cert that's valid for 2 years or less to be in expiring status. The next property under CA is online expiration threshold. So this indicates how many days away from expiry an online CA certificate should be considered to be in expiring status. Renewing online CAs also requires significant planning, so I'm specifying a year here. The next section over to the right here is base CRL, and the first property under base CRL is validity threshold. This indicates, based on the lifespan of the CRL, whether it should be considered an online or an offline base CRL. My online CAs publish CRLs which are valid for a week, so I'm specifying 168 hours here, 7 days. Any CRLs with a lifespan of more than 7 days is considered to be offline. The next property under base CRL here is offline expiration threshold. This indicates how many days away from expiry an offline base CRL should be considered in expiring status. Getting a new offline CRL signed and published takes planning and coordination, so I'm giving myself plenty of advance notice, 60 days. The last property under base CRL is online expiration threshold. This indicates how many days away from expiry an online base CRL should be considered in expiring status. My online CA CRL should be published through automation at least 2 days before the old CRL expires, so I'm indicating 2 days here. The next section is Delta CRL, and the first property is validity threshold. This indicates, based on the lifespan of the Delta CRL, whether it should be considered an online CA Delta CRL or an offline CA Delta. In most cases, you won't be publishing Delta CRLs for your offline CAs, so setting this property to 0 considers all Delta CRLs to be online. Second property under Delta CRL is offline expiration threshold. This indicates how many days away from expiry an offline Delta CRL should be considered to be in expiring status. Since I'm not publishing Deltas for offline CAs, I have this set to 0. The last property under Delta CRL is online expiration threshold. This indicates how many days away from expiry an online Delta CRL should be to be considered in expiring status. My Delta CRL should be replaced at least a day ahead of expiration, so I'm specifying 1 day here. The next section is OCSP, and there's only 2 properties here. The first one is offline expiration threshold. This indicates how many days away from expiry an OCSP certificate being used to sign offline CA OCSP responses should be considered in expiring status. I don't have OCSP set up for my offline CAs, so I have this property set to 0 so that it's disabled. The other configuration property under OCSP is online expiration threshold. This indicates when OCSP certs for online CAs should be considered to be in expiring status. My OCSP certificate should be replaced via auto-enrollment at least 3 days ahead of expiry, so I have 3 days specified here. When you're finished defining these properties, don't forget to save your changes. Well, I hope you found this demo to be informative, and I hope you're as excited as I am about the new PKI Spotlight features. I'll be back soon to highlight more of the new features we've added. For now, this is Bruno signing off.